And Enoch lived 65 years, just a kid. And he begot Methuselah. He had a son. That's great. Now you say, what's the significance of Methuselah? Well, his name is significant. Listen to this. His name means, when he is dead, it shall be sent. Hang on to that one. That's worth at least a quarter. When he is dead, it shall be sent. Isn't that an interesting thing to name your son? When he is dead, it shall be sent. In that name is divine revelation. It was as though God said to Enoch, you see that baby Enoch? That baby you just had? The world will last as long as he lives. Are you with me? The world will last as long as he lives. For when he is dead, then it shall be sent. What shall? The great deluge and destruction that came. So the world was to last as long as the son of Enoch lived. 1 Peter 3:10 says this, 3:20 says, the long-suffering of God waited in the days of Noah. What was God waiting for? He's waiting for Methuselah to die. And God said, I'm not going to send judgment by the very name of Methuselah until he dies. How long did Methuselah live? Longer than any man in the history of the world ever lived. Does that tell you a little bit about God's grace? Does it? 969 years. So before you impugn the justice of God, look again. He was so merciful. It should impress us to know His grace is that way. What an exhibition of mercy. He waited almost 1,000 years for men to change. They only went further and further and further away. You see, and God knows when a man crosses the line, doesn't He? God knows that. You say, but they never had a chance to know the truth. Oh, yes, they did. Romans 1:19 says in verse 20 also that there's enough knowledge of God in a man, there's enough knowledge of God from the visible creation so that every man is without what? Excuse. They had the revelation of a Redeemer in Genesis 3:15, the promised seed of the woman to bruise the serpent's head. The institution of the expiatory sacrifice as the way to approach God was already given from Abel on. They knew how to come to God. The mark of Cain placed on Cain was a constant reminder of what God thought about sin. Adam lived 930 years himself and spent perhaps most of that telling men the truth about what sin brought to him. The preaching of Enoch was warning. The preaching of Noah was warning. Genesis chapter 6 verse 3 tells us the Spirit was striving with men. Don't tell me they didn't know, they knew. They just became hard and rejected. So it was this wicked black world against which the life of Noah stands as a shining white condemnation. Don't know how black the black is until you put white against it. And the man of faith stands up and he rebukes his world by his faith alone. Alcibiades, who was a brilliant but rather wild young man of Athens, used to say this to Socrates, Socrates, I hate you, because every time I meet you, you show me what I am. There's a danger in goodness, you know that? For in the light of it, evil stands condemned. And just living the life of faith in deeds like Noah, working the work of faith is a living rebuke to a corrupt world. Noah threw into bold relief by his faith the unbelief of the human race. And they laughed at him. And they still do. You know something shocking? Matthew 24:37 says this, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also be the coming of the Son of Man. You know, it's not going to be different. What were the characteristics of Noah's day? Well, they laughed at the preaching of the gospel. It's coming. In Noah's day, there was a multiplication of men. Genesis 6:1. came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth. Some say that that's duplicated today in the population explosion, and so thus we're near the coming of the Son of Man. In Noah's day, God was dealing patiently with a sinful world, and so is God dealing patiently in grace now. In Noah's day, God had his preachers, and he does today. In Noah's day, God's Spirit was striving with men, and yet it said God's Spirit shall not always strive with man. With the striving was a threat of the Spirit's removal. So there is today, as the Spirit is here, but the promise of 2 Thessalonians 2 is that the Spirit of God, the restrainer, shall be taken away. In Noah's day, God's message was rejected. It is today. But in Noah's day, there was a remnant of found grace. There is today. And somebody said, in Noah's day, Enoch was miraculously translated, a picture of the rapture of the saints before the judgment. In Noah's day, there was demon activity on the earth. There is today. It's no different. God's going to come in judgment, not by water, but by what? Fire.